for it. Waiting for it. It says we're live. Hi everybody, Josiah here, also known as Chilling Silence. I'm joined by Jared Tate, founder and CEO of DigiByte Incorporated. No, I'm just... Welcome everybody, thank you for joining us this morning. Well, it's morning for me, it's afternoon for you? Late afternoon? I think it's late afternoon for you.
Oops. All right. Yeah, we're good. How's everybody doing? Thanks for coming by here. So we'll give a couple minutes here to, I guess, get everything started. Yeah, let's
in and things. It's been an interesting couple of days, right? We've had a lot of, well, I suppose more than just a couple of days. Specifically, the interest in DigiByte has been going up significantly this last. I mean, not just in terms of the price appreciation this last month, but the overall interest in which we've seen in things like the potential for, or at least the alleged potential for a 51% attack and all those things. I'm keen to cover off and have a chat about that. Is there anything else that you really want to...
Well, I just want to wish and say hello to everybody out there tuning in around the world. I hope everybody's holding in there, doing well. I know it's been a trying time for everybody. I think everybody on the planet at this point has been affected in one way or another by the coronavirus situation. So, my thoughts and prayers and heartfelt best wishes go out to everybody out there. Because, as the death toll increases, I know that there's going to be more and more people in the community affected by that. So I hope everybody's taking care of themselves. 2020 has been one heck of a year so far. I don't think it's over yet. But then I think the first thing I want to say is, first of all, there has been no 51% attack on DigiByte. So, we had same things, start happening in 2017 when DigiByte kicked off that massive rally and run in the summertime. The more eyes, the more attention. We started having all sorts of disinformation popping up everywhere, and it's hard because when you have a decentralized project, how do you have a centralized source of information? But I like to say, hey, there is a universal truth to what is actually happening. So, unfortunately, there are some people out there that may not like DigiByte or for whatever reason, I don't understand it. I mean, if you like Bitcoin, I feel you should like DigiByte. I mean, I feel like we've worked to adhere to the same principles and ethos.
So even like a logical progression, like that's how I found out about it. Started off with Bitcoin, found Litecoin, found DigiByte. It's like a logical progression as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, no, it is. I mean, it's how I still love Bitcoin. I still like Bitcoin. I still have some BTC. So it's not like I ever pictured or envisioned or wanted DigiByte to replace Bitcoin. And, I think some Bitcoin maximalists may get a little defensive thinking that might be possible when they actually look at the tech. But, I don't want that to happen. I feel like we augment and make it better, and we want a robust, resilient, industry. So, once again, to reiterate, those who just showed up, there has been no 51% attack on DigiByte. Yes, there has been as many of you have, watched, there's been a massive price rally that I think has been driven by multiple factors. And when that happens, it becomes more financially lucrative to mine DigiByte. So yes, you are going to see massive increases in hash on different things. We want this. The higher the price goes, the more miners that are incentivized, the more robust and secure things become. So, that's to be expected. Is everything perfect? That depends if you really believe there is such thing as perfection. I think there's always room for improvement. There's always room for growth. Well, I'll tell you what, the new haircut and the new, I think that's getting pretty close to perfect there. So I'm in favor of the new Josiah. But
thank you. But I think this is potentially the only time where I actually like to talk about what is happening with the price is when it is specifically impacting on the security. And you mentioned that because the value and the price of DigiByte is directly relatable to the amount of proof of work that we can have going into it and mining it, because miners got to pay for their hash rate. They got to pay for their power. So it's all part of the game theory. And just to kind of sum up like what you were saying there, yes, with the price going up, the hash rate also goes up quite often, and it makes for a more secure network. Unfortunately, it's just part of the game.
Yeah, no, it's like I said, mining has changed, since DigiByte's first inception. We've now forked in and out multiple times. When DigiByte started, there was a single mining algorithm that was Scrypt. Then within a couple months, we went to 5 algorithms. And then we've made several adjustments over the years, tweaking multi-shield, tweaking things. And obviously, we've been talking for quite some time about replacing SHA-256 and moving towards Prague Pal or some other algorithms. So there's always talk, but here's the thing: as DigiByte grows, we can't just be adding new algorithms every few months. I mean, it gets to be it's risky. It's not impossible. Obviously, we've done it. But it's something that should be done methodically, should be tested properly, and should be carried out with extreme caution and planning. And obviously, at the end of the day, you got to have everybody involved. So, even us, you and I, if we wanted to go hard fork DigiByte tomorrow, we have to get the buy-in of everybody else.
A lot of work. Yeah.
And, last time we did this, it took basically a year to pull off. So, it's not something that, you can just flip a switch and swap out a mining algorithm. It's just, especially with more people coming on board, I think we're about to be on the verge of the biggest wave of adoption crypto has ever seen. What that means, I saw the thing today, Coinbase was offline for a little bit, because we had a pretty good rally today with BTC. I think if you look at what's happening in the world right now, you are going to have, when people, are looking for something to protect wealth, to protect their investments, people are going to start taking honest looks at crypto. I've seen multiple stories out there of people who always thought Bitcoin and cryptos were a joke, now actually starting to take it somewhat serious, because the U.S. government has basically said, hey, we're going to print money to infinity and beyond. No matter what they do. And so, and the crazy part is, even with that, we're hitting a deflationary wave where, you are going to see the US dollar surge. You're going to see a reduction in assets. Oil going negative $37 a barrel. Who would even thought it was possible for the price of oil? It's crazy to think. Somebody tweeted that, a barrel of oil was worth 500 DigiBytes, right? it's or something like that. It's kind of crazy.
We should have bought a lot of it. On the topic as well, thanks for the super chat, Frank. He's asked, will DigiByte ever support staking?
I personally have always been open to the idea. We've talked about it. Different groups have talked about it. If you look at what Decred has done, they've proven it's possible to have a hybrid model, which is what I would recommend if we ever did that, where, maybe we take one of the 5 algorithms and make that a staking algorithm, so you incentivize people to hold, to keep their wallets open, running, which makes more nodes on the network. That is a very attractive thing. It's kind of the best of both worlds. But you still, I believe, 100% need some sort of proof of work component to really help secure it, and while we're on the concept of 51% attacks, I think it's important we first kind of clarify what exactly a 51% attack is and what that actually looks like. Because I feel like there's still some misconceptions about what that is.
People get worried you can just reach into their wallets and just start taking shit out of it, and it's
and that's not the case at all. So what really a practical everyday 51% attack is where you have an entity or a group or a conglomerate or whatever that ends up controlling 51% of the hash rate on a blockchain, whether it be Bitcoin, DigiByte, etc., and it basically executes really something that's known as what they call a double spend, where basically you almost have 2 parallel chains. The 51% attacker overtakes the chain, and it basically sends some sort of massive transaction to some sort of external either exchange or payment processor or something, and then reverses that transaction. So the DigiBytes that are in your wallet that haven't moved aren't going to be affected by this at all. But what this is going to happen, and typically this is carried out, and it's pointed towards exchanges. Those are the highest risk, and obviously wherever the highest liquidity is, that's the most likely target. And I can tell you that there have been several attempts to do this to DigiByte over the years, just as there have been to multiple other blockchains. I'm sure there will be in the future, but that's what we mean by a 51% attack. So at the end of the day, any blockchain that you have 51% of the mining power control over, you could execute this attack on. So there is no system immune to it. However, with DigiByte, because of the 5 independent mining algorithms, if you took all the Bitcoin mining power in the world through to DigiByte, you're only going to get 20% of the blocks. Now, the thing is, if somebody has a majority of 2 algorithms, like say 99% of 2, then you still need
you still need a significant amount of the others.
Yeah, you still need 33% or something like that. I'd have to go back and check my figures. It's a geometric mean. So I've tweeted about the calculators, tweeted an explanation to that. But at the end of the day, first of all, I want to say the more eyes and the more people watching, analyzing DigiByte mining, the better. So, out of this entire situation, sure, there was some misinformation that got picked up and people started regurgitating. But at the end of the day, it's healthy to have, criticism and observation and analysis done on who's mining, what's mining, and how it works.
I think as well, so the original, for those watching at least, the original questions being posed were posed on the DigiByte subreddit, and they were genuine questions, and it was a great conversation. Now, unfortunately, the auto-moderator on Reddit picked up that there was a picture in there, and went, oh, a picture, let's just hide this for now. Once that post got hidden, the original author then posted it on /r/cryptocurrency, and that was where a whole lot of news articles then subsequently picked it up, and they added a whole bunch of misinformation as well, based on kind of incomplete data in the original post. So what started off as some very innocent questioning, going, hey guys, I'm really curious. I've been asking about some things recently about what's happening in terms of your block timings and things. Are they ever going to change, that sort of thing? All of a sudden we have news sites now going, there's a sustained 51% attack going on, which was not what was stated, which was not ever an accusation originally, and it was completely false. So
yeah, and first of all, you can look, the first evidence that you'll see that there is some sort of attempt of a 51% attack on a chain is the orphan rate is going to skyrocket. Now, there were some waiting things that we fixed in 2018 that basically led to some reorgs and some things. But since then, I can't remember which version it was the fall of 2018.
6.3?
I can't remember. We'd have to look on GitHub. But we have had almost a perfectly stable, consistent amount of orphans on a daily basis that's been perfectly average for over 2 years now. So there hasn't even been anything, close to that. So that's how you can check it. If you go to ChainZ, there's a link. You can check the orphans. You can see what's happening there. So I saw a question here. We have one person with 35% of the hash rate right now. They can hit 51% with nice ass. I'm interested in what's being done to fix this. Well, first of all, I do not know for sure that you can see stuff on a blockchain. You can see where the proceeds for those coins are going, right? The reality is it's very, very hard to see, is this a pool? Is this a conglomerate? Is it a company? Is it a group of people? The question is, I don't know. So these metrics and these things are constantly changing, right? Over the years, you've had multiple situations, and with, Bitcoin almost more routinely, where you do have a handful of entities that have over 50% of the hash rate. Like right now, you've got a single company that manufactures all the Bitcoin ASICs in the world that literally, if they wanted to, could carry out a 51% attack on Bitcoin.
We've seen the end bleed vulnerabilities in the past. So
yes, and they just make it, they separate their hash across multiple pools and they make it look like it. But the reality is 3 single wallets could carry out some sort of thing. But the reality is it's not in their economic incentive to do that, because these companies have literally spent billions at this point to make this hardware, to make this stuff, and they would effectively, kill the golden goose. Which, if you go back and you read Satoshi's paper, he said, hey, at some point mining is going to become its own industry, because there is going to be the financial incentive to help secure the network. That's part of the whole reason mining exists. So yes, it does seem like there have been specific miners out there developed specifically for DigiByte, but we end up in a scenario where right now DigiByte is the globally dominant hash of 3 out of the 5 algorithms out there, right? Now, out of the 5, it's my opinion that, SHA-256 is probably the first that we need to change. And that is to completely break from the Bitcoin ecosystem and the big players that are there.
Yeah, definitely.
So, yeah.
And that's one of the things, obviously, for those who are tuning in who aren't too familiar with what has been going on. We've recently done some fundraising to basically donate a sum of money to Christy Lee Minahan. She's begun to work on Prague Pal implementation for DigiByte. So that's going to probably be what replaces SHA-256. I just want to quick shout out and thank you to Shane and Claudio there as well, just asking what the best way to mine DigiByte is. We'll get to that a little bit, and it's around Prague Pal.
Yeah, so moving forward, we definitely want to keep working with Prague Pal implementation, do this faster. I think, as we get more attention, we get more eyes on, it's definitely in our best interest to keep working on it. So there is active work being on it. I myself am setting a fair amount of time here coming up in the next month to start, helping out. And first of all, I want to thank all the developers out there who have been helping and working, Yoshi, Noah, GTO, Josiah, there's a lot of brilliant people that want to help and do things. It's an exciting time.
We're also being asked if there's any time frame for Prague Pal. The short answer is no, especially when it comes to open source projects that people are donating their time to, effectively their spare time. So unfortunately what that means is that there is no... This is not going to happen next week, though. Let's clarify that. This is definitely going to be something, this is more of a long-term game. It's going to take not only several weeks for the implementation to complete, but then from there on out, we're going to do additional testing on the testnet. We'll be doing a bunch of things like Gitian builds as well. We will probably even reset the testnet, or at least spin up separate independent testnets and test it clicking over a couple of times. From there on out, we're actually going to have to then release it. It's going to go out to all of the miners and things like that are going to need to implement it and start signaling their support, plus the delay time frame there in terms of how long we want to give people to upgrade. So that in and of itself could be 3 months alone, plus additional time for everything else. So, yeah, it could take a little while.
Yeah, it definitely takes time. So I'm seeing some comments about your volume, Josiah. I don't know if you can turn it up a little bit. There you go.
Swing that around.
Perfect. So a few more people look like they just joined asking about proof of stake. We talked about that at the beginning of the video. Yes, it's an attractive idea, but if done, it needs to be a hybrid. So, say we keep 4 of the 5 mining algorithms and add a 5th, that's a proof of stake. Yep. I am definitely, for multiple technical reasons, thinking any sort of complete switch to proof of stake is a bad idea, just because I just don't believe it's as secure, and I think the evidence and history is on that side. Let's see here. Got the 3D printer. Yeah, I got a 3D printer here. It's where these are coming from, the Digi and Bitmask.
So what happened in terms of shipping those internationally? Is that viable, or is it?
It seems to have worked to Europe, just not Canada, which is, I don't understand.
No.
I actually sent them to Europe to a few people. Now the shipping, I would recommend going with the cheaper shipping option, but it could take a week or two. I have open sourced the designs to these. So if you want to print this yourself, the STL files and all the components and the list is on Colts 3D, and then you can find it on Twitter there. So that's what I recommend if you have a printer or know somebody in Europe, you want to make your own. It's all open source. So it's, I spent about 7 days designing these myself, and, I've tested it, wear it every day. I know a lot of places in the US are mandating masks everywhere you go. There's a little valve in the front that opens. Screw on side filters, but anyway. Let's see here. So if you have any questions, put them out on the chat here.
So one of the really cool ones from John here is, will we be implementing Schnoor signatures at the same time as Prague POW? I'm not sure about that. I don't know if we're going to make that into 8.19 yet. What are your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, so Schnoor signatures are awesome. I think it's the future. I mean, it increases the efficiency, and there's a lot there. So, one of the things we've tried to do, just because when it comes to integrating with new exchanges and new platforms, pretty much everything in the entire industry, if they've worked with at the protocol level, they've already integrated Bitcoin, right? So there are several things that we like to keep very similar in terms of easing integrations and stuff like this. With DigiByte. So, what we've actually found, we've adopted some of the newest and latest technology over the years, and we actually end up helping some of these exchanges implement new things for not only DigiByte but Bitcoin as well. Because they have to go and change their engines and their code and stuff for these new. So we've actually answered a lot of questions that the Bitcoin core developers and stuff should have asked for some of these larger exchanges.
That was what happened specifically with the upgrade to 0.17 originally, because they changed a lot of the underlying what were the RPC messages and things like that. And so when we upgraded, every exchange had to make sure that they then supported those messages. And unfortunately, which was why at the time I think we lost about 15 different exchanges, was because some of them were okay to upgrade and fix their stuff as they implemented us and support these new messages before even Bitcoin had them. Some of them just couldn't do it, unfortunately.
What you had is you had some exchanges that were developed early on, 2014, 2015, and then these platforms sold their software. And then you had dozens of these exchanges pop up, and the reality is some of the operators really had no idea what the hell they were doing, how to operate this. So when it came time to upgrade the core exchange code base, they didn't really know what they were doing. So anyway, so if you got some more questions, let's see here.
We're being asked about Digi Assets on iOS app or Koinomi. We've talked with the Koinomi team. They're really great people. They've said they're interested, but they haven't committed to anything as far as I'm aware. But in terms of the iOS stuff, I did a DigiByte update. I think it was 192, which was like a few days ago, where I've talked about what's going on there, some of the recent commits to the code and things like that. Plurn is currently in the process of refining everything that we've got at the moment, and he is now taking over and working on it instead of Yoshi. Yoshi is going to be picking up DigiByte Core and the 0.19 merge. He's also potentially going to look at Schnoor signatures. We'll see how things go. And I don't want to speak on his behalf, but yeah, it's coming.
Let's see here. Question, audiobook, Blockchain 2035. No, we have not finished an audiobook for Blockchain 2035. I don't know when we're going to get that done, but it is on Amazon. You can get it there. But yeah, I don't have a timeline. I mean, we've got a lot going on right now, and I've looked into it, and to actually roll out an audiobook definitely takes a fair amount of work, especially because they recommend as the author you read it. When we calculated how much time it would take, it was about 30 hours of reading time. So it would be a pretty long book. I've considered maybe writing a shorter edited, like beginner's guide to blockchain or something like that. But I haven't decided yet. So let's see
one
here.
of the really good questions that I've just seen here is, how much of a problem are orphaned blocks? And that's probably worth talking about, because actually what I'll do, why don't I'll bring that up on screen, and we'll show some orphan blocks here, because this is worth clarifying about what happens in terms of the multi-algo aspect of DigiByte. So let me just take a screenshot so I won't bring my whole browser across.
I'm getting some questions about exchanges. I just want to clarify this out there. I don't really talk directly to any exchanges. I mean, I've had a few interactions here and there, but I don't really on a daily basis talk to exchanges. And in fact, the last, I'd say 6 months, I've had almost zero engagement with exchanges. So it's other community members that have pretty well handled that. It's just not something, as a founder, I've kind of tried to distance myself from, several things and kind of let the decentralization take over, because, there's this kind of misconception that people need my permission to do anything, which is not true at all. So to get away from that, I've kind of like, when people say they want to talk to the CEO, I'm like, there is no CEO, there is no thing, we've had some crazy stuff over the years, but I think people are starting to finally wake up to the idea of what decentralization really means.
We still get asked in the Telegram channel all the time, just, hi, I need to speak with an admin, please. Why?
Right. Yeah,
Most of the time, the admins are there to just remove spam, and that's about it. So there are definitely 100% better people to be talking to if you're wanting to do things like exchange integrations and things than an admin or moderator in Telegram. What I'll do is I'll really quickly bring this up on screen. Can I do that? Is that actually gonna... Oh yeah, if I bring it up here, it'll show up. That's cool. So this is the orphan chart. Unfortunately, Jared can't see this because I've just brought it up over top of the screen recording at the moment. This is the orphan chart at the moment here. So you can see it goes up and down a lot. There are some days that we've got over 25. There are some days that we've got absolutely none. Now, the reason that DigiByte has so many is because we are multi-algo. And so what happens is our difficulty for... Actually, I can move this out of the way so you can see my hands. So the difficulty for each of our 5 algorithms goes up and down basically in real time. And what we'll find is that we'll have, let's say, for example, an scrypt block is mined. The difficulty for scrypt is then going to go up a little bit. What we'll then find is that there might be a skein block mined, and maybe like half a second later, an scrypt block will also be mined by a different mining pool. So although this one came out first, and although it has all the transactions in it from this skein block, the scrypt one was done with a higher difficulty, and so it orphans off the skein block. scrypt one takes precedence on the network, still has all of those same transactions and everything. Nothing's been lost at all. No transactions have been omitted or whatever usually. They just go back to the mempool if anything. And it just carries on. So the only reason that we have so many is because we've got all of our difficulty being adjusted in real time. Doesn't affect block propagation, doesn't affect anything at all like that. It is just simply part of being multi-algo.
So DigiByte, what about the idea of building something not so open source with DGB so it has more competitive advantage? The reality is there's tons of projects that are closed source that are built on top of DigiByte. One of the ones I helped create and build from 2015 through 2017 was DigiSign. It's a document platform. It's still up and running. You would argue all these exchanges that integrate with DigiByte are closed source and proprietary. The COVID alert app, tons of different things. The core protocol itself of DigiByte is always going to stay open source because there's no way to commercialize and privatize something that's decentralized and open, right? So the reality is anybody that's watching this, anybody out there can go build their own proprietary app on top of DigiByte that does something, whether it's managing healthcare records or aviation records or, anything you can think up. I mean, it's just like the ID securing Rembrandt paintings, right? There's all sorts of stuff. So, as we come, okay, so I've seen some questions about the real estate app. At this time, because of the market conditions, we were facing a lot of resistance for getting that out there. And basically this time everything's on hold because, nobody's really doing anything out there investment-wise at this point in time. Unfortunately, that particular application, has to have a lot of buy-in from different entities and parties, and it's just, it's a lot of work. It's an uphill battle. So, and then as for the DigiDollar, so I've got a lot of, questions and asks. So the DigiDollar idea, first of all, I still think is a great idea. But secondly, in order to do it properly, requires some modifications at the core protocol level, which would require a hard fork for DigiByte. This is a lot of work. This is a lot of time, and it's not something we can just haphazardly roll out. There also now is a very real danger with this much money printing that, if there's some very smart people out there that are saying that we could see, potentially some pretty severe inflation in the coming years. So by pegging something on a decentralized blockchain to a fiat currency that literally can be printed to infinity, when it's backed and supported by a decentralized, finite deflationary currency, aka DigiByte, there's only going to be 21 billion in 21 years. That provides and creates a lot of risks. just because if you're trying to peg, a DigiDollar that's backed by X amount of digibytes, and then that particular fiat currency experiences hyperinflation, that could end in a disaster. And you see some of the things. So it's something that we don't want to just roll out and end up having blow up in our faces. So it's a great idea, but it's just something that's not going to happen anytime soon, unfortunately, because of the inherent risks in the system. So we're definitely open to ideas and how to fix some of this stuff. But one of the things that I've been telling people here, you have a lot of fear and uncertainty in the world right now. And I believe that you're going to see a lot more attention on crypto and blockchain as a safe haven. I tell people if people don't look to Bitcoin and look to truly decentralized projects at this point in history, it's never going to happen, because this is why many of us have been involved with this technology for so long. I mean, the main reason that I was so attracted to Bitcoin when I first discovered it in 2012 is I was very adversely affected by the 2008 financial crisis. I personally, it was a very hard time. My life was turned completely upside down. And I got hit pretty hard, like a lot of people did, and I basically was at the time a junior in college. So, coming out of college into a workforce where nobody was hiring, there was no opportunity, it kind of forced you to innovate and think outside of the box. And then here we are in a situation right now where we have more unemployment than at the height of the Great Depression in the United States. So we literally have not seen this economic turmoil and carnage basically since the Civil War in the United States, so that's well over 150 years.
There's an interesting question here, kind of a bit morbid, really. What happens if Jared or Josiah are gone? Can DigiByte survive? Well, the stats website would eventually die off as my credit card payments to it would stop paying for the server, but do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, if I got hit by a bus tomorrow, nothing would change network-wise. Hopefully the rest of you out there, would at least send my mother flowers. But, other than that, it's going to have no effect on the DigiByte blockchain itself. The core code, all this other stuff, it's open source. Anybody can contribute to it. So, but yeah, there's no way, and that's one of the things I've tried to do. Prime example, I have no direct access or control over the digibyte.io domain name now. That's managed by community members. They update it, they do it, they tweet it, other stuff like that. So, I've basically tried to make sure and keep things as decentralized as possible myself, for the event that, at some point, it's, I'm not going to live forever. But I think there's a very good chance that DigiByte will outlive me. So, you need
to start hanging out with Richard Hart and his whole like make me live forever kind of.
All right, go cryogenically freeze my head down in Arizona. Yeah.
Maybe not. Let's not be an early tester of that. It doesn't sound.
Right. So the COVID app, I've seen several questions. I know the Rudy and the Dutch guys have done a fantastic job. I can't, I don't really know that much about it,
Yeah, I've not been involved in the slightest. I don't think you have either.
No, I haven't. So, and just to clarify, once again, there's a lot of things that happen. I get asked about, I really don't know because I'm not directly involved. And that's the beautiful thing of having a growing, blossoming community is you're going to have all this stuff happen. And I learn about it just like everybody else does, on social media or news articles. So,
or even about exchange listings. I can see we've got a James in the chat there. He was talking about exchange listings in our last interview on the Crypto Mug Investors. So, and I found out about it at exactly the same time as everybody else. Well, maybe a day before because we filmed it, but you know what I mean. Like, it's great.
Yeah.
It's awesome that the community has spread so much and developed and grown so big that there's too much for any one individual to keep track of everything that's going on. I think it's awesome. It's great.
Yeah, so I got a great question here from Bill. Can you explain a bit more detail how the difficulty changes each block? How fast does it change exactly? So, just to kind of, for those that have heard me say this before, I'll explain what difficulty is. So, difficulty is basically, every time a miner submits a submission, it's called a hash, right? And it's almost like submitting a lottery ticket, because at random the network chooses somebody who submitted an answer to these really complex math problems, and that's basically who gets the block reward. So that's how new currency comes into circulation. Each block, there's a few digibytes associated with it that goes to the miner that solves the math equation or the cryptographic hash, right, and submits it. So now the problem is for instance, when the first mining started taking place with Bitcoin, Satoshi was just using his I think it was a laptop, and it took him, I think, like 3 or 4 days to solve the first hash. Well, then he incorporated this thing called difficulty adjustment, because depending on how many miners or computing power and how much computing power is thrown at the network, you need to be able to adjust how hard the math problems are to solve. So that way you maintain the proper block interval. So with Bitcoin, block intervals need to be 10 minutes. With DigiByte, it's 15 seconds. So if you throw, a 20-fold increase in hash rate at a blockchain, all of a sudden, those blocks that are supposed to happen every 10 minutes or 15 seconds start happening like every millisecond. So back in 2014, there was something that we call multi-pool attacks. So there was these multi-pools. All these miners would group themselves together, and they would basically go from mining Litecoin, they would go to Dogecoin, and then they would go to DigiByte. So all of a sudden, we would see a 20-fold increase in hash rate, and our block timing at the time, I think, was supposed to be 1 minute, and all of a sudden we're getting like 300 blocks a minute, right? So these miners would get thousands and thousands and thousands of DigiByte almost instantly. And then they would go dump it on an exchange, and then they would leave our blockchain when the difficulty finally caught up and made it harder. And then they would leave, and then the blockchain would freeze, sometimes for minutes, sometimes for hours. In the case of Dogecoin, I think one time their chain froze for 2 days, right?
48 hours or something, yeah.
Between blocks. And that was because we all had the same code that is still in Bitcoin to this day, which means every 2016 blocks, there's an adjustment. Now, the problem is that adjustment doesn't move fast enough. Now, Bitcoin has never had this issue because it's always been the dominant blockchain for SHA-256. Now, I've told people for a long time, if there's like a power outage at some of these big mining factories or farms that have 15, 20, 30% of all the mining power, you could see Bitcoin blocks slow down. And when Bitcoin Cash hard forked, I was on Twitter.
You were on Twitter at the time.
I'm like, what's everybody waiting for? Your Bitcoin Cash only has 10% of the net hash rate. So you had a 10-fold reduction. Yeah. Their blockchain's they're not going to find blocks for hours because there's just not enough computing power there, because most people had no idea how the difficulty adjustment system works. So one of the things we originally did with DigiShield is we're like, hey, why can't we adjust the difficulty every single block? So that way, if there's a 20 or 50-fold increase in hash power, it could catch up right away, because the current difficulty system of Bitcoin doesn't adjust that fast. And in fact, we've seen multiple times when there's new miners that come out and you have a 10, 15x, all of a sudden the average Bitcoin block time, I think I've even seen it as low as 6 minutes, on some periods of time, because it just takes forever for the difficulty to adjust. Yep. And then the opposite's even worse when you have a massive decrease, because then the chain freezes. Yep. So to answer your question, with DigiByte, every single block, the difficulty is adjusted for each algo. So, since there's 5 different algos, basically what happens is if you have like a script block, another script block, and another script block, not artificially, but the geometric mean calculation is going to skyrocket the script hash rate, because we're like, hey, there's too many script blocks coming in a row. And then it's going to start lowering these other blocks. So it's not a true one-to-one hash rate comparison. And by the way, hash rate is an estimate. It's not an exact finite number, right? So when you're calculating and comparing hash rate on DigiByte, it fundamentally acts differently than a single algorithm blockchain. So the short answer is DigiByte difficulty adjusts every single block, and it can rapidly handle like a 20, 40, 50, 100x increase in hash rate. which makes it much, much, much harder and more resilient to somebody. So people think, oh, I'm going to do these simple hash rate calculations that, I just need to do this to carry out a 51% attack, get a majority of this, majority of this. But what they fail to understand is how fast the network is going to respond to that dramatic increase in hash rate. So it gets prohibitively expensive, almost in an exponential manner.
Yeah.
And that's why, we've had very, very quickly. So it's not a simple, calculation. And that's where, you've seen some of these, the numbers are wrong. So, in the past, we've had some interactions with some cryptographers and mathematicians who've tried to calculate this, and they came to the conclusion that our system was definitely the most secure system out there.
So I've actually, if you're curious to find out a little bit more about that, I've talked about this. At the time, we weren't supposed to say it, but we're no longer on Polonius, so who gives a shit? And it took, so they had a cryptographic expert that they basically brought in, and she looked at DigiByte and looked at multi-shield and looked at the multi-algo code, and it took, I think she said that she was working on it for like almost a week, like the better part of a week, and it was mind-blowing as far as she was concerned as a cryptographic expert. So that was pretty cool. One of the other questions though, what about a 2 times increase? How fast will it change?
It's just a couple blocks. I mean, I think it'll more than double, per block. So, literally, and then yes, I see a question about decreases. Yes, it'll decrease just as fast, because the most dangerous thing is actually having somebody throw a massive amount of hash rate at it, increase the difficulty, and then leave, because then the chain freezes. And like I said, we've seen that happen. I think we had several hours between blocks in 2015, or 2014. It was
2014 before the multi-algo, multi-shield, I think it was. Was that when it was DGW?
Wait, what?
Or was it before that, the dark gravity well?
We never adopted the gravity well implementation, just because it wasn't really that much different and it was too slow. I mean, we tested it out, but it was too slow to keep up with the increases and decreases.
What was used before multi-shield for the difficulty adjustment? It was something else.
Well, we had basically, so what we'd done is we took the variables that were already in the existing Bitcoin difficulty adjustment, and we basically tried to like 4x them and then 5x them the amount of movement, and it didn't work. I mean, it worked for a little while, but it still wasn't enough, because we're like, hey, we've seen 20-fold increases instantly in hash rate, and so, that's the thing. So, and this is the thing. It's like when you go to different exchanges and you see that they require 15 blocks of confirmation, that's because, the work and the estimate's been done for you to do like a 15, 20 block rollback gets exceptionally harder and harder and harder.
Yep.
So, that's part of the reason. People are asking about the shirt. It's Crypto Bantam. Let me post the link here.
Lewis has asked, he says, who else thinks that Jared and Josiah need to drop one single thing that isn't known by most of us, even if it's not 100% for sure by the end of the stream? There's a few things we could probably say.
So somebody says, let's see, like the idea of pegging DigiDollar silver, good match, both super underestimated yet super precious. See, here's the thing. Any sort of pegged fiat DigiDollar or precious metals dollar, here's the fundamental problem. How do you take something physical and peg it to a digital thing? And then secondly, it's like, okay, if you use some sort of price oracle, which, when we've talked about how we do this with DigiDollar, what happens if you take the pricing information from a single exchange and that exchange is hacked, that exchange goes under, and you have that code hard-coded in a decentralized blockchain that you can't just change? Well, that's a fundamental problem. So then the idea is like, well, what if we average the price data from 30 different exchanges? Well, okay, but then again, you're still relying on these single sources, and what if 3 or 4 of them collude and change stuff, or some of them go under? There's all sorts of variables, but that becomes even harder with precious metals, because are you using the spot price? or using the junk price? Are you using, because what we've seen it decoupling from physical silver and gold and the real stuff. And, I've never been a believer after seeing the manipulation, in these paper gold and silver markets. It's just, I don't think it's a very, very valuable source. But anyway, that's the hard part about, when you have to rely on these external centralized sources for information and truth, and then they either start behaving nefariously or providing inaccurate data, or they get compromised or they get hacked, that brings the whole system down.
And the problem as well, so when we were last talking, I think we spent like a couple hours on the phone going over a bunch of different ideas and things, and the problem as well is what happens if money starts getting printed too much, like we're seeing. Like it's definitely, it's an unknown, unfortunately, if we are trying to peg to a US dollar, for example, and inflation does hit. Like, what happens if we peg to the Venezuelan dollar, the bolivar, and it suddenly skyrockets in terms of how much is being printed? There's a lot of unknowns.
Yeah, there's another thing. So, part of the initial idea was you take, say, let's see, what is our price right now? Is it 1 cent, 2 cents? I haven't even looked.
I haven't been on there in a while. I usually find out about it from Mike and James on their videos.
Okay. So it's 1.5 cents, right? So if you want $1 right now, it's roughly 62 digibytes. So part of the idea was, if we take those 62 digibytes, we lock them up cryptographically in a wallet, okay? So only you can access them, and then you basically issue and create that new digidollar. They're effectively backed by those 62 digibytes. Now the question becomes, what happens when the price of digibyte triples and that $1 is backed by the equivalent of $3 worth of DGB, right? So you effectively at that point have $1 digidollar backed by $3 worth of digibytes. So then when you convert it out, how does that work, right? So then what happens if the reverse happens and says that there's a 50% decrease, which has happened dozens of times over the last 6 years, and I'm sure it'll happen again. Things fluctuate, markets cycle. But the issue becomes, how do you handle that? And then there needs to be almost like we call it the digidollar factor, almost kind of like how the difficulty adjustment works. You need the fiat conversion factor. So at one point, if let's say you say there's over $1 million of outstanding digidollars out there, but there's only the equivalent of 80% of that actually locked up in smart contracts on the blockchain. So effectively every digidollar out there is only backed 80%. Well, okay, that becomes an issue and could cause problems. So then it becomes, what about the opposite? Say there's $1 million, but there's $3 million worth of digibyte that are locked up that can't be moved or used without burning, these other digibytes. So you have this very interesting economic situation where it is perfectly possible to issue a digidollar and have it backed by cryptographically locking digibytes in your wallet. So there is no central authority that would do this, right? Basically,
there's yourself. There's no interfacing with the bank, just to clarify for people.
Yeah, there's no interfacing with a bank. There's no interfacing with an exchange. You would literally get in your DigiByte wallet. You would literally say, hey, I've got $1 worth of digibyte. You would lock that up, and then that would be tied, and you effectively could not move those digibytes until you burned a digidollar to release it, right? But then the question happens, you end up with these crazy scenarios where if the price of digibyte 20x's and you've got all these funds locked up, like you end up with some pretty cattywampus situations that need to be thought through and intellectually discussed. Otherwise, you end up with a ticking time bomb. But the whole point of this system is to create something like this. It must be decentralized. And that's the fundamental problem with every stable coin that's out there right now. How these other stable coins are dealing with this is you have a private company that holds fiat currency in a bank account. And then if the price goes up or down, they print more. And, I don't want to get into that whole speculative rabbit hole about what they're actually doing, because I've seen some evidence that a lot of them are actually fractional reserve anyway.
I have seen their bank statements. Mount Gox is perfectly solvent.
Yeah, exactly. So, that's the point, and that's the problem with all these other stable coins. And, so it is possible to add some code to the DigiByte core protocol that could allow you as a user to basically get in there and say, I'm going to create $10, 10 DigiDollars, but I'm going to cryptographically lock up these DigiBytes so nobody can use them. But I do have the ability at a year in the future or 6 months in the future where I can buy some more DigiDollars back, send it, burn them, and then unlock my DigiBytes. That's kind of the idea. But it's how that pegging mechanism takes place. Because the other thing we looked at is, we could have people tie in with a banking API and all this other stuff. And once again, you get back to that external information. And anytime you take a blockchain system and you're linking and talking back to some sort of external party, that becomes the Achilles heel and the biggest vulnerability to that sort of system. So that's why, for a truly decentralized stablecoin to be pulled off, it's got to be integrated at the core protocol level. There's got to be some safeguards in place. So if there's a 5, 10, 15-fold increase or decrease, then, something needs to be tripped to auto save, those funds and those things and help bring stability to that system. So if you have, a massive rush and increase in crypto prices combined with an inflationary wave, which would happen, with mass inflation, because you're going to see the inflation in the price of Bitcoin and DigiByte as well, then you end up with some interesting situations. So, it would be awesome for somebody doing like a PhD in economics to work through these scenarios in this kind of a system. But so if anybody out there is watching this sees that, we've got all sorts of ideas and thoughts. But anyway,
how many accountants are out there? Maybe a few economists. Yeah. Asleep at the wheel. Are you two fans of the BitFi wallet? I take it you mean these two? Yeah. Yeah,
I got mine sitting there around here somewhere. But I love the BitFi because first of all, they don't store anybody's funds. Second of all, you literally can take $1 million, put it in your brain, and have no digital reference to it anywhere, which is amazing. I went through and verified their stuff. I mean, if their company goes away, the wallet's still good and does things. So, and by the way, none of us have ever been paid to say that or endorse that or do anything. I have never been paid by a single product, promotion, exchange, or anything. I've just basically gone out there and saw what I support, what I believe in, and what I would personally use. And that's when I've made recommendations.
Thank you for the super chat there, Lewis. He's really keen on there being something that no one has ever known before about DigiByte. That's the hard thing, though, is this. Everything is so open. It's not like there's a bunch of people that are colluding behind closed doors that are jumping on. You've heard about those early Ethereum phone calls and things like that. I'm for the most part, this is it.
Yeah, no, there's really no sort of organized, it's kind of what you see. So it's a question, multiple owners of one DigiByte wallet. That's been possible since 2014. It's called multi-sig. So everybody has, there's multiple wallets that can do that.
The Go wallet, though, which needs fixing, is definitely the easiest in that aspect. I think OwnBit do it as well. You can do it from the core wallet. It's a little bit of a jump through a hoop or two, but you can do it. But OwnBit actually make it very simple on their wallet.
So add some more questions. So price speculation, just to let everybody know, in going on 7 years now, I've never given public price predictions on DigiByte, and I'm not about to start. All I can tell is it's going to change. It could go up, it could go down. I've been a horrible trader over the years, so I stopped trading. I've been burned several times, when I was sure something was going to happen and it didn't happen. So, the last thing I ever want to do is start giving investment advice or making promises. And I've always told people, look, at the end of the day, DigiByte could go up a long ways or it could go to zero. It's probably, it's in somewhere in between. So, I don't know. So.
A couple of people have also asked about your visit to DC.
Yeah, so I, as a good American, put it out there. Hey, I'm more than willing to come talk to any government agency that's interested in blockchain technology. I've been hit up by multiple governments now. State governments are actually starting to hit out. I mean, I've had some interactions. I've worked with government stuff in the past. Worked for the government in the past, and as many of you know, nothing ever happens quickly in the government. You throw on, when I was there in January, I mean, I got the invite and I went and talked to some people, and the reality is the most of Washington D.C. was paralyzed at the time by the impeachment, situation. Not a lot was happening, and now we have a worldwide pandemic and crisis. So I got to be honest with you,
been slowed right up.
So, there's a lot of stuff that we've been working on and trying, but let's be real here. You've got a economic meltdown and collapse underway. You've got the most deadly virus and mass casualty event in the United States soil. I mean, I just saw that there's been more casualties in the United States since more than the Vietnam War. So, and it looks like it's really not subsiding. And, unfortunately, some new experimental and controversial technology is really not on the priority for a lot of these different groups right now.
Yeah, it's interesting because on the one hand, we've got everything slowed up and people's spare time is now kind of just diminishing and things, but on the other hand, if ever there was a time that something like this was needed, where there is a finite fixed supply, but then on the other hand, again, the people who are working on it have got to make ends meet and things like that as well. They've got less free time because they've got, a job to look after and things. But the world really needs DigiByte right now, basically.
Yeah, so, at the end of the day, you have two fundamental different systems, right? You have DigiByte and Bitcoin with a finite, limited scarcity that's mathematically enforced by the protocol. There's only going to be 21 million Bitcoin. There's only going to be 21 billion DigiByte, 1 to 1,000 ratio. But over here, you've got every central bank in the world printing unlimited amounts of fiat. And the math doesn't drive. So, really, at the end of the day, what you're going to have to see is one gets scarcer and scarcer and more valuable, and the other one gets less and less and less valuable. And that's what you call deflation and inflation. So, trying to peg one to the other, it just fundamentally is never going to work. People are asking about Vesti. I already answered that earlier. Basically, once again, everything's on hold. So if you want to learn more about that, you can go back. So
we've covered a bunch of stuff. I think perhaps now is a really good time for us to wrap it up. We're just about to hit the hour mark. Is there anything more that you wanted to add, especially be it around what's been going on with everybody asking questions around 51% and all that sort of thing? Anything else?
Yeah, I mean, once again, first of all, there was no 51% attack. So just let me reiterate that one more time. Secondly, yes, we are working on new updates and a new algorithm, to improve and further improve the security of DigiByte. And then finally, I want to thank everybody out there that's working hard each and every day to help either build on DigiByte, promote DigiByte, add new features, add new things, and it's truly amazing to see how much the community's grown, how many more people are involved. Once again, just to reiterate, there's a lot of things that I learned from social media, just like everybody else. Like for those that think we have some sort of secret conspiracy mastermind thing, that's not the case. I mean, we literally pretty much a lot of stuff that I learned about, I learned just out in public, just like everyone else, because we've gotten to the point where there's so many people and so much happening. It really is kind of hard, to keep on top of it all. So, anyone out there is free to contribute, build, use, get involved. There is no permission needed to build on top of DigiByte. Anybody can be involved. And to finalize, yes, it's great, for the price to go up. But I can tell you that just as many times it goes down. So it's going to continue to be volatile. I think we're heading into a very volatile period in human history across the board, whether it be politically, whether it be economically. and that's going to be reflected in crypto prices, just like other assets. And then it is more susceptible because at the end of the day, it's still an unregulated market, you know, and it's you know, it is what it is.
Maybe what I should do really quickly to finish this off is pop this up on screen here and show people. So what we've got here is, I think this kind of surprised me that this was actually going up on the website and things, but the info paper, you can go there and click that and it'll come up and give you information about this. It's something that's been worked on for a little while here. You can click on it, it'll download it, bring it up on screen. Oh, we have labeled it version 1.0. I was kind of surprised by this as well going out there, but big shout out to Nigel, Demi, and all the others who've been involved with this over the last little while, kind of bringing this together and making it look pretty and things. And yeah, it's really great to see. So I've popped a link to that in the chat there too.
Awesome. Yeah, no, that's the first time I've seen it there. So that looks cool.
I think it was it yesterday morning or something? I woke up and I was like, oh, that went live. Oh, yeah. What do you know?
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. Question: what have you been doing to escape during this quarantine time? That's basically making masks and working on some other stuff. So trying to keep busy and help out however we can.
Where's my beard? It's kind of gone. I figured, I was like, I'm in lockdown for like 4 or 5 weeks. Why not? Like, who's gonna see me? And then I realized, I do videos most days. Most people are actually gonna see me.
Yeah. So if anybody has any quick questions, I may have missed some there because it's jet kind of moves pretty fast. But yeah, you got any more quick questions?
Why is DigiByte not on Coinbase? There's a Medium article about that. We've submitted documents to them. You can go have a read.
Yeah, I have no idea. We've talked to several people several times over the years, and you know, they're free to add DigiByte anytime they want. They don't need anybody's permission. You know, but it does seem like they've kind of taken the road where the projects they do add are more of the commercial, you know, less decentralized type. So, you know, that's their prerogative and that's their choice to make. But at the end of the day, you know, DigiByte doesn't, you know, need a single exchange. There's you know, tons of other ones out there. I mean, it would be nice by all means, but you know, it's not going to kill DigiByte. So, you know, like I said, they're more than welcome to. They don't need anybody's permission. It's, you know, free to integrate and adopt it. And yeah, I mean, I think they would do very, very well, and I think they would bring in a ton of support. But you know, at the end of the day, there's it's their choice. But you know, there's I guess I should just say this. There's been a lot of the projects that have been put forward on the back end have been controlled by the same group of insiders going back to 2013, 2014, 2015. So one of the things is DigiByte's never been in that group, and it's never been controlled by any, you know, centralized group or you know, cabal, if you will. But you know, so I think there has been some resentment of that from some of these groups, which is why you see DigiByte actively suppressed on several occasions. But that just makes us tougher and more resilient, and it proves that we really are a blockchain of the people, for the people, and by the people. And that to me is worth its weight in gold or DigiByte, obviously. So.
Well, there's one more question there, perhaps a nice way to wrap this up. A question from Script Skynet. Jared, how impressed are you in the direction that DigiByte is going?
Oh, absolutely! It's amazing. I mean, it's truly humbling to see how things have grown and matured and what's happening. You know, when I go back to the day that I first launched DigiByte in 2014, I had no idea what was going to happen. I didn't know if it was going to fail. You know, I had the miners set up in my garage. It was, you know, I think it was 15 below that morning in Idaho. You know, I was like, hey, I got some ideas to make a better, faster, more secure version of Bitcoin. I don't know if anybody's going to use it, but let's put it out for the world in a decentralized open source fashion, see what they were going to do. You know, and I really had no idea what to expect. And I figured if it was worth something and worthwhile and enough people saw it, then eventually, you know, it would take off. So, but at the end of the day, it's not me that did that. It's all of you out there across the world. and that's what it is. It's much stronger and it's much bigger than any one person. And to me, that's amazing, and that's all I could ever ask for.
Cool. Well, thank you so much. We'll wrap it up there. It's been an absolute pleasure. Really appreciate you coming on, taking time out of your day as well. We can just very, very quietly hear the printer going in the background there, making those maps and things. People want to go and check those out. Where should they go and see?
Oh yeah, so the masks, bluemask.store. So BLUMASK.store. That's where you can get them. I'm donating some, to different groups, and then I'm also donating some of the proceeds to the DigiByte Foundation. So, but obviously it takes time and resources to make them. So, I do have an entire room full of 3D printers, and actually had to go out and get some help from some people to help me put them together. So we've done quite a few, and it's been really cool. To be manufacturing and doing something. So if you never checked out 3D printing, I think it's the future. There's a lot of cool stuff you can do. And I think that's one of the ways that countries can bring back manufacturing from China. So anyway.
Thank you, everybody, so much for joining in. Thank you, Script Skynet, for the super chat there as well. Thank you, everybody, though, who's tuned in, asked questions. This has been great. Let's do another one sometime soon. If you want to find out more, you can go and check him out, twitter.com/Jared C. Tate. You can find me, I'm at DGB_chilling. Otherwise, we'll see you all in the next video. Go DigiByte.
Yeah, thank you all. See ya. Cheers.